Hi everybody. Thank you for attending this webinar. Kecia's going to be presenting on behalf of the Center for Women. It's our Tampa Bay Works for Women program. So if you have any questions or want to enter anything in the chat, please feel free. I will go ahead and relay the questions to her so that she can focus on the presentation. And outside of that, Kecia, go ahead.
Thank you so much. I'd like to say thank you to Tampa Bay Works for Women and to the Center for Women for having me. Normally when I give this presentation, it's to companies and to leaders and executives at companies, and it's somewhat company focused, but I know this is a very personal discussion today, so I'm excited to be here with you to answer all your questions. This time, anytime talking about this topic is important, but right now I think it's even more important because, as we all know, all of our lives are in transition a little bit. Some of you are trying to elevate your position within your own companies. Some of you might be running companies and interested in elevating your personal brand with your external audiences. And some of you might be out of work or trying to change or transition in your work. So this topic is going to be really important. So thank you for joining us. So here's what we're going to be talking about today: personal branding. We'll be talking about what it is, why it's important for women in particular, why it's important for a job search, and then actually dig into the concept of developing a personal brand. And I'll take you through an exercise to get you started with that. And then lastly, we'll start to talk about how we apply this in an interview situation, because the hope is that you'll use everything that you hear today and the things that you work on after today to help you advance somehow in your career. So what is personal branding? Before we can really think about personal branding, we need to think about the concept of branding. So I just wanted to share a definition of branding with everyone, just to get everybody on the same page. So when I look at branding as the collective impact or lasting impression from all that is seen, heard, or experienced by consumers who come into contact with a company or its product and services. So there's a couple of key words that I want you to be thinking about here because they apply to personal branding as well. What you see, like in the case of a lot of companies, you'll see their logo, you'll see their advertising. What you hear, maybe when you see them on the news, what they talk about, and what you experience as a consumer with them. It's very similar in personal branding. Here's a couple of brand examples that I thought would show what we mean. So I'd like for you to be thinking about what you associate with these brands. And if you can, put it in the chat. And I'm going to ask Zoe to read some of them off when we're done here. But these are some of the things that I associate with these brands. So first, Nike. I think of first and foremost sports and athletes. And with that, winning. The brand of Nike has a lot to do with sort of strength and winning and progress. And then also recently, Colin Kaepernick. And as someone who works in corporate social responsibility, I follow this very closely because you can tell that Nike has taken a stand in support of Colin and his efforts. And that's really consistent with their brand value, supporting athletes, supporting winners. Secondly, we have Apple, which is known for innovation. It's known for its iPhone. And then in the times of COVID, it's known for their attempt or their interest in putting together a contact tracing app together with Google. So obviously very socially responsible. And then lastly, we have the brand Lexus. So Lexus, I associate with quality. I associate with luxury. But interestingly, it's owned by this brand, Toyota Motor. Lexus is owned by the Toyota Motor Company, which is kind of interesting, I think, because Toyota as a brand has entirely different association. Maybe still quality, but also more affordability, little less luxury, but still high quality. So just kind of an interesting way to think about how we associate things with brands. Zoe, were there any comments from anybody about what they associate with these brands?
Not yet.
Okay.
But
so
I'll read them off as they come in.
Okay, we're going to head on to personal branding now and hopefully be thinking about it as we talk about personal branding, because I'd love to really get you thinking about what it is that you associate with these brands. So if we get back to personal branding is how you present yourself. It's really about your values and how they're articulated, your unique combination of skills, your experiences, your personality, everything that makes you you. It's how you want to be seen how you should be seen by the world, or how you want to be seen by the world. It's the telling of your story, and it really reflects everything about you. So here are some more examples rather than companies of people. So be thinking about, I'd love to really get your thoughts on what you think about these three personalities. For me, Oprah is consistent. I think of her as a talk show host. I think of her as sort of a business woman, also a television producer, a publisher, all of that, and as a philanthropist. Does anybody have anything to share about Oprah? Other qualities?
Tanya said that Oprah is an icon.
She's an icon, so she's someone that we look up to. We also have the singer Lady Gaga. Think of her mostly as a singer, but more recently we associate acting with her. And we almost always associate a shock factor with her. Then we have Serena Williams, who we associate with sports, tennis specifically. And you can see actually she's wearing a headband from Nike, so she's also consistent with that brand. I think of her a little bit as someone who's part athlete, part fashionista, because she's always seems to be promoting what she's wearing, or people comment on what she's wearing. So it's a part of her brand. And then also as a mom, most recently she became a mother, and she was very open about her issues with postpartum depression. So I think a lot of moms look to her and associate with her as well. Any other associations people have?
Carla says that Serena Williams is a trendsetter, and Vicky states that Williams is also an icon. Tanya believes that Serena represents being a legend.
Okay, that's good. One more thing to think of as we leave this, because I think it fits in with our discussion today. Here's Lady Gaga, who this picture is very different than the previous picture. So if you follow her or notice her at all, and she's hard not to notice, she's really making a shift recently to be more glamorous and more sophisticated. And my guess is that's a conscious decision for her, because she wants to be perceived in that way, probably for the kinds of music she wants to produce or the kinds of acting she wants to do. So why is personal branding so important for women? You know, women face different challenges in the workplace that we have for a long time and probably will continue to face. But one of them is gender bias. And when you face gender bias, I think you have to be very careful with how you present yourself in the workplace so that you could overcome some of these perceptions or ideas that are out there. There's a level of expectation for women to sort of be balancers of everything. They have to be good at work, good at parenting, good at family, good at a lot of things. And that's sometimes challenging in a work situation. So we need to really be thinking about how we want to present ourselves so that we can counteract some of that. It's the same with leadership. I think there's still a leadership gap. Some of that is changing, which is good. And there's also a confidence gap. I think women traditionally aren't very comfortable talking about themselves and maybe not promoting their strengths, which we'll talk about in our part 2 of this presentation. But I think that plays into your personal brand and really understanding what sets you apart. Now, why is this so important in job search? Well, personal branding makes you stand out. It makes you hireable and relatable. So if you're thinking of two people are applying for the same job, and one of them is positioning themselves with a very specific, unique skill set or a set of characteristics, they will often stand out and get the job. It also serves as an introduction to an employer by showcasing your skills and your qualities and what makes you unique, which is so very important when things are competitive, like they are right now. And if you're not actually in a job hunting mode, you might be looking at these same situations of internally. How can your boss see you in a different way? Or if you have a business, how can your clients see you in a specific way? So let's jump into sort of the meat of building a personal brand. I've broken it down into what I hope are 3 helpful steps for you. Identifying what makes you unique, and we're going to have an exercise for that so we can get started. Crafting a brand statement, and then living your brand. And I think if you think about all of these 3 together, you'll be very successful in putting this together and applying it to your career.
Kecia, there was one question from Satura.
Yeah.
She asked, what happens when the gender gaps bias with women come from other women?
I'm not exactly sure I have a scientific answer for that. I think for me, it's maybe just a personal perspective from things that I have seen in the workplace. I think women have an opportunity and an obligation to support other women. So when it happens, it's extra challenging. But I would say the principles we're going to talk about will apply in this situation as well, because whether it's a man or a woman, if they get to know you for who you are and the value that you add, I would hope that that would be overcomable. But it is unfortunate that that exists.
Okay, great.
Okay, so jumping into what makes you unique. Who you are and what you do and what you want to be known for. Those are the questions you need to start asking. What do you really want to be known for? How do you want people to perceive you? What are your values? And when I think about values, I think about values that are important to you, but also important to employers. And that might actually be another answer to the last question, that if you can get to a point where you can find consistency in values or consistency in mission, that's always very important in a job or a career situation. And then understanding what are your unique skills. So kind of stepping back and answering all these questions when you have some time will be very helpful for you in getting to the next step, which is to develop your own personal brand statement. This serves as a brief introduction for employers. So you'll see it in a variety of places. It might be at the top of a resume, a summary statement. It might be in your social media. It might be spoken and how you talk about yourself. But this is really when you're done with this exercise, this will be sort of your short answer of what describes the essence that is you, which is sometimes challenging to do, especially if you have if you have a real breadth in your career and your expertise. It conveys who you are by incorporating your values, skills, and experience. So it's not just your values, it's not just your skills, it's all of that. It's what they perceive in you. And sometimes it's even some personal things, passions of yours, things that you enjoy that set you apart. So one helpful way to get started in answering these questions is to fill in the blanks for one of these statements. So for example, I am blank, known for blank. So you could say, I am a teacher known for my work with teenagers or expertise in helping teenagers, or I use my project management skills and my creativity to advance projects in the advertising industry, or something like that. So you're showing, you're not only telling what you're doing, but you're showing your value.
Kecia, we do have one question. Carla asked, would you take the same approach if you are a business owner?
I would take the same approach of these 3 steps. So if the question is about crafting a brand statement, branding for a company is slightly different than branding for a person, but sometimes they're closely intertwined when you have your own business. So in this case, if you're talking about a business, that might be I represent a company that does this, known for that. Or you might say, I'm the president or whatever your role is, and I'm known for my work in helping companies collaborate or something like that. So the steps are the same. You just look at it with either your individual hat or your company hat. So now the living part of your brand. I look at living your brand in 2 ways, especially if it comes down to job hunting. It's or career advancement. The first is in person. So I like to think about this as first impressions. So when we're back and able to actually get in touch with people face to face, or even on video virtually, I imagine I'm walking up to somebody for a meeting I'm having, or going into an office for an interview, and we're looking at each other, we're making eye contact, and we're about to shake hands or not shake hands if that's the case. Think about what you want that impression to be. So now that you know what your values are, you've crafted your statement, what do you want them to think about you? Do you want them to think you're very relaxed, you're very energetic, you're bright, you're positive, you're stern, that you're late, that you're colorful, that you are, whatever it is, just that's what I'm talking about when you're in person. So what is that first impression, both the appearance and the experience that they have with you? When you think about living your brand, you also need to think about the other person or your audience and what is it that they need to see from you. Not that you change the way you act, but make it easy for them to understand you based on what they need. That's how you add your value. And then I think about living your brand as in a networking application. So if I, again, in an example where I'm in it, maybe I'm at a Chamber of Commerce meeting and there are 50 people and we're all shaking hands and talking to each other. And I have a wonderful conversation with someone, and I want to make sure that they hear, feel, experience what it is that I stand for. Because at the end of the conversation, I might ask them if I could follow up with them afterwards, if they might have any contacts that would help me in my work. I want them to be able to have an experience with me where they first say, yes, I'd be happy to do that. But secondly, when they introduce me to someone, they can say, this is who she is, what I know about her, what I experienced about her, and confidently feel like they understand your personal brand. So those are some examples of how this personal brand might work in person. On social, it's a slightly different animal. We talked about the brand statement. First of all, this is something that you want to include in across all of your channels. So whether it's LinkedIn or Facebook or Twitter, whatever it might be, you want to have some component of your brand statement there consistently across all channels. It might not be word for word, but it'll have the same gist. So if someone, an employer or a boss or a client is looking at your channels, you look consistent. Secondly, you want to have a professional headshot. And that doesn't necessarily mean buttoned up in a suit. That means wearing what you would wear for work. I think that's the best way to show your personal brand. So that's making you authentic. Because if everybody looked what might be perceived as professional, it might not be consistent. So if you're looking for a corporate role, it might be more of a suit. If you're applying for a job or doing something with a startup, maybe a hipper brand, it might be if you're in nursing or medical field, you might have something that looks more consistent with that. So, and again, whatever it is, I would use it consistently across all your channels. And then I would think before you post. This is oftentimes the challenging element for people because there's a belief that some channels are more appropriate for business and some are more appropriate for personal. But the reality is they're all public and they're all something that an employer or a client or a boss can see. And I don't want to discourage anyone from being themselves, but I just want you to be mindful if you're really thinking about personal branding, what it is that you put out there. It's okay to be real and playful and authentic, but just be mindful. Sometimes people ask me, can you have a personal brand and a professional brand? And I would say no. In very few cases does that happen. Sometimes people are such big personas, they're different and professionally than they are personally. But for the most part, consistency is really important. And I think of if we think back to Oprah, how she is associated, she does a lot of work with the Weight Watchers and health and wellness. If she didn't act consistently with those values in her personal life, she wouldn't be trusted in her work as in Weight Watchers. So I think, for example, if she showed up at meetings with bags of donuts or something, there'd be a disjoint there. So, or promoting things on her social media about desserts, so I think it's just as an example, just why you have to be thinking about who you are as a person, regardless of how you express it personally and professionally. And then I just wanted to make one final note about thought leadership. This is a bigger topic than we have time for in this presentation, but for people who are trying to establish themselves as a personality, someone who's the go-to person for like special yoga techniques, or trying to be known for, they're sort of a personality or an influencer, that requires another level deeper from a social perspective relative to content, writing, blogging, influencing, and all that. And that's a strategy in itself. So just know that if you're someone who's trying to build a personal brand where people are coming to you because of what you do, your business is you, that might be a different discussion. Here's my screenshot from my LinkedIn. I just offer it as an example of what I mean when I talk about consistency with personal values and personal branding. So the header that I chose here has a quote that I think is very consistent with my values. Some people use imagery or photography, and whatever it is, it's great, but just be thinking about that. I also have a professional photo that's consistent with who I am and the experience that you would have with me in person. So I'm a happy person, I'm smiling, I'm not very corporate. You can't see my outfit in this thumbnail, but I'm wearing a dress, a solid colored dress, and it's not too overly buttoned up. This is something that I would wear to a work function. And then also my little descriptor here below talks a lot about my skills and a little bit about my values. CSR stands for corporate social responsibility, and I talk about community impact. A big part of my value system is giving back and working together with others to help others, women and others exceed. So I think that you can very quickly see a little bit about how my personal brand might be implemented here. And I would encourage you to do the same with your social channels. So we're going to do an exercise now so you can start practicing this yourself. It's not as exciting as being outside and stretching, touching our toes, but it's an exercise nonetheless. So I hope you'll join me. Before we get into that, Zoe, is there any other questions that we should answer?
As of right now, no, I don't see any other questions that need answering.
Okay. I'm going to get my phone here because we're going to do a little exercise, and I'm going to time, it's going to be kind of timed just to make sure that we can get through it here. So let me go to the exercise so you can kind of be thinking about it. So we're going to talk about your personal brand. And I'd like you to take a piece of paper if you have it. And on that piece of paper, draw a line. It can be horizontal or vertical, it doesn't matter. And I'm going to ask you to start writing down on one side all of your values and personal characteristics that make up who you are or how you want to be perceived by the world. On the other side, have your unique skills. If you need help with the values part of it, this is a little tough to read, but I can read off some of these. This is just a list of values that I've used in an exercise before, but things like authentic, balanced, comfortable, fame, faith, energetic, courteous, intellectual, logical, mannered, polite, success, status. One of these was a financial security. So be thinking about those kinds of things when you talk about your values. And then we won't do it on today's call, but we'll do it. I'd like for you to do this at home, but then eventually you're going to want to whittle each of these down to a list of 3. So whether you have time for it now or you do it later this week, I encourage you to have this nice long list, think about it, really think about it, and then get to your top 3. And if you can't get to your top 3 right away, start with your top 5 and then eventually cross off a few. Go ahead and spend, I'm going to give you about a minute here just to kind of start thinking through some of those characteristics. And I'll put this back up if you have good eyes. About 10 more seconds. Okay, we'll jump back into this. It was important to me that we got that process started because I really want for you to feel like when you leave this presentation that you have something tangible that you can start working on with your own business or your own career. So thank you for taking the time to do that. I appreciate it. When you have this completed, you're down to your 3 words each and you've put it into a statement. I would encourage you to look for help from others. And one great way to do that is by asking your former bosses, your former colleagues, friends. I typically don't ask family because like if I asked my mother, she'd say all sorts of wonderful things regardless. So somebody who's a little bit objective. But I think it's a good exercise for you to reach out to those folks and ask them questions. It also gives you an opportunity to engage with the business contact, and they'll tell you. You might learn something that you didn't, a skill that you had that you didn't know, or maybe something that you need to work on, or at the very least, you'll have validated what it is that you're trying to portray. And I'd even share with them your personal brand and get their reactions. I would think about who inspires you when you're going through this exercise, because there are probably women or men that you think about professionally that have the same values that you do, have accomplished things that you want to accomplish. And I would follow them on social media. What do they talk about? How do they present themselves? I'm reading books, memoirs, biographies about people. I think that's a great way to learn from others that you admire. And then if that doesn't work, or you still need more help, I would ask the experts. And here are two examples that I can share. One of these, the Big Five project, is a project by a researcher by the name of Jeffrey Potter. And he has an online, it's a free exercise, an online form. It's a personality test that gives test takers information about themselves, while at the same time gathering data for researchers. So all of your information will be compiled in with others, but it'll spit out 5 personality traits that, sometimes it's easier for somebody else to help you with that process. The other tool that I've used is Strengths Finder, and that's often used by HR departments. And it really is built on the premise that everybody comes with some strengths, and it's better that companies leverage them rather than look for weaknesses and build them. So this is a book. It's really short. You can get it in print or online. And at the end of it, you get a link to a personality test or a Strengths Finder test, and then you'll get information back. Once you have that, then you can look back through the book and it'll show you what this means. Once you know what your strengths are, what that means, and what kinds of roles and things that you should be thinking about and things like that. So just something to consider. So now we've talked about personal branding. We've gone through quite a bit of information, but I wanted to lay the foundation, because all of this is leading up to how do you use it to get a job, or how do you use it to advance your career? And that's going to come in this next step here. Our webinar was put together in a 2-part series. The second part will be delivered at this same time a week from now, so Tuesday, May 12th at 1 o'clock. And it's really going to be about confidently presenting your personal brand. Now, this happens to be one of the people that I follow, that I admire, that I have followed and read a lot about. And here, she's using a technique for confidently portraying your brand, which is really kind of assertion, which not everybody feels comfortable using. But I just thought it was fitting for this presentation. But in this presentation, you're going to learn skills about confidence building, some tools and techniques that will help you, whether it's in an interview or just in general. But you're also going to learn some specific things that I have from my background doing media relations and training executives to speak with journalists and on camera, that help you whether you're talking virtually, which has become so important, on the phone. How do you sound compelling and get your story across by phone, or in person? So I hope that you'll join us for that presentation in a week, and you can reach out to the Center of Women or Tampa Bay Works with Women after this webinar. So the last thing I just want to leave you with, just so you don't have to wait until next week. These are kind of some of the areas that we will be talking about. Confidently presenting your brand through the ABCs. So thinking about appearance, behavior, and communication. So please join us. And in the meantime, I say thank you again for joining me. I wish you success on your career journey. And if you have any questions, I would love to answer them.
I will sit for a couple of seconds just to see if anybody has any questions they want to send over. Okay, not seeing any come up, so I think that everybody has had all their questions answered.
Okay, wonderful. Well, then, do you have anything more to say about the next webinar, the details for that, or?
Well, everybody that registered for this webinar, you will all receive a copy of this recording. You'll also receive a PDF of Kecia's presentation, and I'll also include the link to register for the part 2 of this series, which will be, as she stated, next Tuesday at the same time. So that's Tuesday, May 12th at 1 p.m. So keep an eye out on your email for all that information. I should be getting it out to all of the registrants and within the next hour to hour and a half. And if you have any questions, you can contact me and I can put you in touch with Kecia, or you can also contact our director of our Tampa Bay Works for Women program, Satura Schumann-Smith. I'll include her on that email as well, so you have her contact information. And Kecia, Tanya wanted to say thank you, and Carla said thank you, be safe and be well. So I think that's a really great time to wrap everything up.
That sounds great. Thank you so much, everybody.
All right, thanks. Bye-bye.